Just a quick disclosure to share in conjunction with this podcast. Each of us are speaking to our personal experiences and do not consider ourselves experts and cannot offer medical, therapy, financial, or legal advice. We represent a wide range of experience on the autism spectrum and will always honor each perspective that is brought to our discussions. Our experiences, opinions, and perspectives are all unique and different and will be celebrated. Thank you so much for listening and connecting with us. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Navigating Adult Autism. We are 7 moms with a bunch of opinions, perspectives, and experience. And we are here tonight with Heather, Elizabeth, Tara, Dawn, Cynthia, and Kara. And we also have a guest panelist, Suzie. And she has her own transportation company, and we'll be touching on that. So she's just going to jump in when necessary, because tonight's topic is transportation. And it's a big one, whether you have a high-functioning adult with autism to a nonverbal, profound child with autism. There's, transportation is important, and we all have to take our kids somewhere. And I know some of you are probably have adults with autism that are high functioning that can drive, and that's great, but that's not the picture for all of us. And transportation is a big issue. So we're here to talk about it and what has worked and what hasn't worked. And we're just going to jump in and talk about it. Personally, I have a child that's 31. He does have his driver's license. He took probably 9 months of driver's ed. And that was okay because, we weren't paying for university. So we just kept writing checks for driver's ed. And it went really well, sort of. They thought the best plan for him was to, obviously he memorized the driving test. Make long story short, he did get his driver's license. He ended up having an accident. He was okay. But on that, well, maybe I should tell the story quickly because it is a learning experience. So he wasn't driving a whole lot even after his license, because when myself or my husband would drive with him, we saw problems. He, as a high-functioning autistic child, he's a rule follower. So he likes stop signs. He liked green, red. He still, to this day, will do left, right, left, because you were taught that in driver's ed. So people would honk at him from behind because he was taking too long. He really had a problem with making snap decisions. Yield signs, 4-way stops, yellow turning to red. When my husband and I were in a car one time, it was almost a bad accident at Republic Road. And West Bypass. So that was scary. But then we decided that he should just do short little trips with us. And he would actually drive up to his middle school sometimes and drive around in the parking lot and then drive home. He would drive to the subdivision pool. So herein lies the problem. So we were leaving the subdivision pool. I happened to come in town. I was driving back from St. Louis, and he was at the pool. And I said, I'll meet you at the pool and say hi, and let's just drive home. And so he was there, hugged it out. He got it in his vehicle. I was in mine. He was behind me, and in the subdivision, he pulled over. And of course, I, got out, and I'm like, what are you pulled over for? He goes, well, I think I left my pool key at the pool. It's not in my, I can't find it. I said, okay, well, let's make a left out of here, and we'll swing back around to the pool, and we'll get it. He said, okay. So he's behind me. And I make the left, not a busy street, a side street, but the main street into all the subdivisions. So it could be busy, but not really. So I made the left, and I saw him make the left. I looked at my rearview mirror, and when he made his left, he just kept turning, and he hit a telephone pole, and the telephone pole caught fire and sparked and landed on the vehicle, and I freaked out because there was flames, and I called 911 right away. And I was a basket case. Yeah. In fact, the 911 operator was like, ma'am, you need to calm down. And I said, but you don't understand, and all of a sudden I see him flying down the road, waving his hands, and they're because they're at
So he got out of the vehicle.
He did get out of the vehicle, probably
With all of these wires.
correct. Later we were told that was not the right thing to do. But so here I am with the 911 operator saying he's okay, he's running down, it's okay, but still send someone. I don't know, there's a fire, whatever. So he's running down, waving his arms, and I'm laughing because he says, and I'm getting out of my car and I'm crying. And he goes, Mom, there's been an accident. I'm like, right. yes, there has been an accident. And then he turned to anger. Why are you crying? What is happening? Doesn't like. So then he's very angry now that I'm crying. I'm like, okay, it was way too much for me because, I was scared and, all that. And so then I had to call my husband and tell him. And then they wouldn't go find him on the golf course. And I said, you need to find him. Well, no, it's really busy here. I said, this is not an option. You need to find him. And so anyway, my husband came. And luckily, I ran into a Greene County sheriff who knew of my son's disability. Because from where we were, we had to have the highway patrol come because it was outside the city limits, something like, I don't know. But he gave a heads up to the state patrol and said, hey, you need to be careful of how you talk to him and whatever. Anyway, city utilities came, and then they're coming to my car, and it was on KY3 because it had a power outage in the neighborhood. And it was actually a very slow news day. I mean, it really was. It was like a normal, quiet day. And so anyway, where was I going with that? Oh, city utilities came, ma'am, I'm still in my car. I'm not kidding. I'm in my car still on the side of the road. I'm just like, what is happening? And we don't know how your son is still alive because these are all live wires. And we don't know. Because the pole, it went on the passenger side, just crushed the black Trailblazer right down. And so he jumped. I said, well, it's a miracle. I don't know. It's an answer to prayer. You just need to really teach your son about live wires. And here I am, like, okay, I didn't ever think of when you're in an accident and live wires. So
that's good to know. I will be talking to Zion today.
Yes, about accident and when to get out and when not to get out. And
I've trained. I feel like I've talked to him about police presence and and that kind of stuff. But I don't think I've ever talked to him about live wires.
Right, in an accident and what that scene could look like. If you're on the side of the highway, don't get out. So anyway, sorry about the long story, but it was just eye-opening, and that kind of curtailed his driving. He was scared. And even though he'll make short little trips just in the neighborhood, he hasn't driven. And he didn't get his license till he was 24, I think. And so we haven't really driven. And he'll say, well, I'm not doing that. That scares me to death. Like, it's too dangerous to drive. And even when I'm driving him and I get, slams on the brakes or I slam on the brakes. See, Mom, told you. That's why I shouldn't drive. I said, well, but anyway, moving forward in the conversation, disability transportation is out there, and it's a big topic, and it's a journey to get someone to help you because you want your child employed. You want them to live a somewhat normal life, or they need to get to doctor's appointments and therapies. And it just seems like my husband and I, we don't do it on our own. We still don't do it on our own. In-laws help. There's a transportation program through SWI. Our guest panelist is here with her company. So transportation with an individual with autism, it's a big deal, and everyone should be aware of it that's here and who's listening and how we can handle that. So if anyone else wants to jump in.
This is Kara. Transportation gives our young adults so much freedom.
Right.
So much freedom. And when they're not able to drive, they have to rely on everybody else, and it gets very frustrating for them. Because they see their friends, they see everybody else driving, and they're not able. And so...
and your daughter even had to use a golf cart at one point to go to work. This is what we do.
We made adaptations because, my daughter, not to make a big story, but we did go through 2 sessions of driver's ed through Mercy program that they had. It since has closed since 2019. I think they closed 2019.
It was a good program.
It was, yeah. And she went through, one session wasn't enough. So we had to go through 2 sessions, and 2 sessions wasn't enough. And we would still take her out and drive. I wasn't a very good teacher. I just wasn't calm enough. So my husband would take her, and they would both come back and crash and take a nap because they were both exhausted. That's how much nerving it was, for her. And, finally it just came down to she just wasn't consistent enough for us to, she passed her written. We didn't take her to get the driving. I wouldn't let her because it just wasn't consistent. She would practically go through a stop sign. We have, she knew how to get home. And I was like, okay, I'm going to see. I was driving with her one day. We were practicing. I'm going to see. I'm not going to tell her where to turn. And so she stopped at the stop sign. She almost ran through the week before. And I was like, okay, she's doing good. And went through, and she just kept driving, drove right by our house. And I'm like, dude, really? But again, the consistency wasn't there. So she's now 29 years old. Maybe she's more mature. Maybe she's more adapted. We may start trying again because they can learn. Everybody can learn. And so we're gonna probably try again.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of our kids do drive.
Yes, Tara.
Oh, that's me. So Zion, it took him 3 times to pass the driver's training. It actually wasn't that he didn't know what he was doing, because he was a really good driver when we got in the car. Actually, not me, because I'm exactly like Kara, and I do not drive with my kids. And I have 2 neurotypical kids that I still do not drive with. And Jason has to do everything. I have it all set up for Jason. And I was like, okay, this is what you do the first lesson. But then Jason does something different and takes Hannah right on the freeway the first test or the first driving experience. So I can't do that. But Zion took 3 times, but the only problems he had was because he was nervous with the driver's instructor. It wasn't because he couldn't do it.
And the instructor plays an issue too. What kind of instructor you have?
Yeah,
right.
And she was so good with him. The last one, when he finally did pass, does anyone pass their parallel parking? I just told him right away.
I sure didn't.
Yeah, I didn't pass it.
I didn't.
I couldn't pass it right now. At 48.
It's really in Springfield. Where do you parallel park?
I know.
Really?
And I told Zion,
maybe.
I told Zion, I was like, just count on not passing that and just work on everything else. He did not pass it. That's the only thing he missed on the driving test. So I was like, that is perfectly fine. And but he is a rule follower, and I do worry a little bit for ad-libbing. He has a very hard time not sticking with the rules, and he has called us. I actually wrote this down to mention it, but you just live these things and you don't think about them, and then as we talk, I remember these things come up. But a couple of times he's got lost because his GPS ran out of signal, and he's panicking. He does.
It's scary.
He thinks about it ahead of time. He pulls over, and then he calls us and says, "I'm lost. I don't know where I am. There's a Burger King." I was like, I have no idea where you are. Right. You're close to a Burger King.
Right.
But
Find your phone.
Yeah.
Life 360.
Yes, and that's what we do now. We do find my friends, and then we can give him directions home. And that seems to work better than sometimes when your GPS is out. That's happened twice, where he's called and he's crying and he's lost. I was like, not a big deal. You're not far away. We can find you no matter what. So you just pull over and you wait for someone to help you. But he's a really good driver. He's probably better than anybody in my family. Good. So, but yeah, it's those things that you're not ready, are not outlined perfectly.
Right. And I know that happens with typical kids too.
Yeah.
They're going to run into the same,
Yeah.
I'm lost. I have friends that have typical kids and they don't even know what street they're on.
Oh, no.
Because it's so easy to get around
Yeah.
here. But
yeah, Hannah relies on her GPS too. So it's not just.
they're
just
lucky, aren't
mine.
they?
Yeah.
We didn't have that,
But yeah, I do worry.
But it gives them a sense of
Yeah.
independence.
He's had a couple of accidents, very small, not involving anybody else. But man, he's very fast food oriented. That's what motivates him. So he wanted to go get his own fast food. And so he got his license pretty,
Right.
I mean, he was motivated.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good.
I got a piece of advice from the Department of Revenue. This is Don, and my son's a non-driver, and I'll talk about him in a bit. But he said for the individuals who can pass the test, and it's a matter of nerves, he suggested calling and do a meet and greet with the examiner. And so I thought,
Yeah.
that's a
good
great
advice.
idea. You know,
Yeah.
Well, and Zion had been there 3 times, so he knew
I was just going to say,
everybody
Every
there.
single one.
they knew my son very well. So.
But the examiner did mention that you could have the test read to you. There was a
Right.
lot of
on the written
support.
test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Dawn knows more about that.
I do know a little bit more of that. JR's 26. He's a non-driver because he hasn't passed the written portion of the test. I would like for him to continue to work on that. He is going to need help. Lynn Nideg at Achieve had a program, and there will be one in the spring. So I can enroll him in that class. So hopefully we can give more information on that in the blog. So we may do that again. The problem with JR is he doesn't like classes. He didn't like school. And Lynn said, though, that she's seen a number of individuals, I don't know how to put this politely, who may have some real cognitive deficits, who have passed the test because there's only a stock number set of questions. And so you sort of memorize
Correct.
the test because
Yes.
you see them over and over again. So in addition to Achieve, I also formed a study group. There was 3 young men with autism. My son was one. The other 2 have passed. My son hasn't. Yay. And what's really cool is about one of the young men who passed, I would have, if I had been a betting person, I would have said, JR's going to pass before this person. So my mommy judgment was totally wrong. But the neat thing about this individual was he was motivated. He read the manual. And another thing I found out from the Missouri Department of Revenue, they have a YouTube channel. They can read the manual to you.
Oh.
And so it's like, well, maybe I'll just let JR
Okay. Well, that's
listen.
good information to have.
Yeah,
That's
listen
for
to
our
it.
podcast. That's very good.
And hopefully we can get the link to that
Right.
too. We've also done a number of the practice tests that you can find online. So we hooked up the laptop to the big screen, and when we had our little study groups, we would sit and discuss it. And I mean, there were a few times where I wasn't sure what the correct answer was. So, well, let's look it up. So I also think JR could benefit from some test taking.
Practice.
Yeah, well, and I've thought about one accommodation that they can make is they can print out a paper test. So then he can cross off, well, that's a silly answer. He can cross off the ones, he can narrow his selection down. The basic multiple test taking skills that you might learn in high school. The longest answer is usually the correct one. Avoid the answers that have never and always, just as
I didn't know that. Did you guys know that?
Yes.
Darn, now I'm just now learning.
And if you don't know, pick
and
number
you
C.
passed the test without it, didn't you? Just some things like that. And another thing he didn't know, I don't think, even though it's clearly on the test and you put the headphones on and they read the test to you, there's a skip button. You don't know that one, you
Right.
pass that.
Yeah, that's important.
So, because there's no, the Missouri Department of Revenue said there's no time limit. He could take 2 hours to take it if he wanted, but you have to get what, 21 out of 25? I'm not,
Right. I don't know what it
20
is. 3 or 4 wrong.
yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah.
yeah, I think there's more grace than that. But once you miss that number, you're over.
Right.
The test is gone. So it's like, well, maybe we do the paper and pencil thing,
Yeah. And I will throw this out here too, is that my son's service coordinator at the time was wonderful, and she did find us a tutor. And so he had a tutor for his written test for quite a while, as well as driving lessons. So that, contact your service coordinator. They're there to help you.
Yep.
And see, reach out for them for any help you need. But
That's right. Reach out and touch. One last shout out, and that's to Empower Abilities, which is, if you're here in Southwest Missouri, that's the Independent Living Center. They changed their name several years ago. Everything seems to change. But Brooke Goober is the youth specialist there. And again, she said, you can book appointments with me and I will tutor. And I believe
oh, great.
that's a free service. So, and that's, one-on-one, which is what it might take. And so when we get to the expectations broadcast, Kara asked me, so do you think JR will learn how to drive?
I don't know.
I really don't. I mean, there's the realistic part of me, but there's the also, I want him to continue to study the test. I want him to take it again. If I'm getting past this, he's not motivated right now because he's had failure. So I've got to tell him it's worth trying, and I want him to try again because, it's almost something you can put on a resume. I passed the state of Missouri's written driver examination. They don't have to know the whole details. He has a high school diploma, but he didn't necessarily earn it the way his neurotypical sister did.
Right.
So it's like the state of Missouri is not going to give him a permit. He may never drive, but, one step at a time.
And how old is he again?
He's 26.
So transportation right now is getting him to and from work. How?
How do I do that?
How do we all do that?
Okay. Well, mommy taxi. This works because I have to be to work at 8. I can drop him off at work at 7:30. So in the morning, no problem. My husband has 12-hour shifts, 2 days on, 2 days off. So on his off day, he can pick up JR, whatever he wants. My son's job, he has a checklist of cleaning and stocking tasks that he has to complete. When he's through with that, he can leave. He hasn't yet learned how to milk the clock. So if he's through with his list, he wants
I think that's a good thing.
we got to teach him how to know. So he's ready to go. So there are times when he's called his dad at 3:00, and I have a calendar set up. Okay, JR, the circled dates are the dates that your dad works. He cannot pick you up on that date. Zara, Zara's my daughter, so she does some transportation too. Zara can't do it on Thursdays. That's her long day. If Zara is working, she did some camera work for the Cardinals, so that job's coming in to an end. But she put the Cardinal game on there. She can't do it that day. JR, it's your responsibility to make a decision on how you're getting home. And that's been hard on me because get in the car. Okay, JR, your dad's working today and it's Thursday and Zara can't do it. How are you getting home? Okay, you got to make a decision.
Is he able to make that decision?
Yes, he is. So his choices, he can ride the city bus. How he started riding the city bus. This is a good one. He's working at SWI.
Which is the workshop.
Which is the workshop. They sell discounted tickets for people with disabilities.
Yeah, it's transportation programs at the workshop, and that is one of them. The workshop will buy all the tickets needed for Oats, for Access Express, or for the city bus, and then those employees come and then they sell them. So they pay the bills. SWI pays all the bills, so they don't have to. Anyway, that's a good program. But he got his ticket from there.
He got some tickets. So he did eventually show me, told me that he had them. And I was like, that's good, JR. We will ride the bus with you so that we make sure that you know how to do it. And we didn't do that. So I lied to him, I guess. Procrastinated a little bit. And as Mary, as you pointed out, my son's a fixer. And so if you procrastinate on something, he's going to do something about it. whether you like it or not. So that's what he did. One day I told him, I can't pick you up and your father's busy. Oh no, I laid the guilt trip on pretty heavy about I've got to take my vacation hours to pick you up. And I was complaining a little bit. So he told me, I got the tickets. I'm riding the bus. Well, I don't think that's a good idea, JR. I'm riding the bus. Okay, JR, you've got your cell phone, but if you get on the wrong bus and you end up in Timbuktu.
Or get off on the wrong.
Yeah, I know. And so, find my phone. That's one of those apps. We still have to do that, believe it or not. But he was adamant. I'm riding the bus. Okay, JR, ride the bus. We live outside city limits by 5 miles or so. So the bus, he has to go to a bus stop. So since we're on the north side of Springfield, the Walmart, vintage stock, the library, there's a plethora of things to keep him occupied. So he rides the bus to the north side, and then we pick him up at 5. We'll text him, where are you?
He's
And
shopping.
so far,
How did that go? Did he get off on the
beautifully,
right spot?
He did.
Wow.
Good.
He did.
I thought the story
Okay.
was going somewhere else.
So the expectations, I've underestimated him more than once.
Is there an app for the city bus? Like, so,
There is.
yeah. Can you put in where you want to go? And because I've never ridden the city bus in Springfield.
Yeah, and we're going to shoot over to Suzie. Actually, you'll know a lot about that.
Okay.
But not right now. But Dawn, go ahead if you're finished.
No, there was one other place, and it sort of slipped my mind. It
Well, I
may
know
come
he's
back.
gotten off the bus and he's gone into Walmart and he's gone into stores and
Yes,
and
he
waited for you.
So far, he's done extremely well. You fear. I don't fear so much that JR is going to make a mistake that's not correctable, but it's the people out there.
Others. Mm-hmm.
What if somebody comes up? Oh, at one point I called his phone and he had handed it to somebody who wanted to use his
it.
phone.
Yes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you're going,
That's a little scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those little things.
Okay, one more, and then I'll shut up. He bought the tickets, but what he didn't know was that there's sort of this ID that goes with him, because to ride the bus is like $1.20. Okay, he's paying like 60 cents. Okay, so it's a significant discount to ride the bus. And he got to the transit center, which is in downtown Springfield. He got on his bus, or wanted to get on his bus to head north, and he gave the ticket to the bus driver, and the bus driver said, "You can't use that. You're not disabled or blind."
Oh.
And the driver wouldn't let him get on the bus. So he got off the bus. He called me. I'm at work. Mom, he wouldn't let me on the bus. And it's like, go inside, talk to somebody in authority, And so
At SWI?
no, he's at
the
the
bus stop.
at the bus at the
He's at
bus
the depot?
administration. Yeah.
Oh.
He's
The
in
depot.
downtown Springfield. And so I said, you're going to have to tell them or, explain it. And it's one of the few times that I've heard him say the autism word.
Right.
And so he did. He explained it. I have autism, and here's my mom. Talk to her.
Yeah, because he didn't look the part, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. And
Well, and it's very confusing, to ride the city bus. I don't know if you ladies have ever ridden one.
Oh, my gosh.
If you ever gotten on one. I know my daughter, when we moved her into town, there was a bus stop, and she wanted to go to OTC. So she called and she goes, "I signed up for classes. Will you take me to classes?" And, "Well, how many classes?" And she goes, "Well, I've got Monday, Wednesday, and Friday." And I said, "No, Kelsey, that's why we moved you into town, for you to be more independent. You got the bus stop right out front. You take your little golf cart over to the bus stop, lock up your golf cart, and you get on." I said, "But what I will do is I will help you the first time." Because I've never ridden the city bus. I've always driven. And I wanted to make sure she'd be safe. So I rode the bus with her. I was impressed in regards to the people on there. They left her alone. It took forever. It's not efficient.
Correct.
It took To get to, okay, so she lived southeast side of town. It took over an hour because of all the stops to get to the bus depot. Once you get to the bus depot, then she had to wait another 20 minutes to get another bus to take her over to OTC. Well, okay, hour and a half to get there. I stayed for her classes, then another hour and a half to get back home. So that's 3 hours out of her day just to get to classes.
Right.
It's not efficient.
Right. That's why I think a lot of people with disabilities don't use that because it's not time friendly.
Right. Right.
For anything.
Well, and
was
here's
that at
another.
dark? Was that at night?
Yes, at the end of it was night classes. So it kind of goes back to, a lot of our kids, some of the kids can drive, but some of them cannot. And so what other options are out there locally for our young adults? Mm-hmm. And Suzie, I would like to invite you into the conversation. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your history, how long you've been doing it, what you did before, which is also brings lots of experience.
And obviously you
into
thought there was a need out there for this, correct? I mean, is that because we have a need? Guy just stated that we're all going through things with transportation. My in-laws help. Now SWI helps out with their transportation program. I mean, he's 31. He's almost 32. I mean, this is an ongoing issue. And I will say that there are times that, I have other friends that are like, oh, thank God my child got a driver's license. It's over. I have to stop running them around. And I thought, oh, that will never happen for us, as parents of kids with disabilities. That will never stop, having some type of transportation for them.
That's affordable. It doesn't, an Uber's going to cost, $25 to get to work, $25 to get back. Well, guess what? That took their whole paycheck.
Right.
So why even go to work?
Yeah. And if some of them are on a fixed income or disability, it's an issue. It's a huge issue. So anyway, go ahead. Welcome. We're glad you're here. And it's Ride for Ability?
Rides for Ability. Okay. And there's a second company that's Ability Transportation, which is how it started out.
Okay.
So when your son was with me, he was under Ability Transportation. But I started it because I'm an occupational therapist of 53 years.
Oh,
a long time. And you get frustrated when you get people independent and they can't go anywhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I've been to many a session with city utilities trying to get my people someplace. And I'm in the geriatric spectrum at this point, in middle-age strokes and traumatic brain injuries and, everything that there is. And nobody can get anywhere.
Wow.
And I have yet to figure out the efficiency of that system. And, most of the people that I deal with as a therapist, they're all neuro damaged, and the majority. And to put them on a circle bus system is a nightmare.
Right.
But there's little sensitivity about what the real population is. And the system is more geared to, I think, income levels. Right. And people who can problem solve how to do a circle. And because my people can't. So one day I just got ticked enough and I said, what can I do? And that's when I started Ability. And at that time...
How long ago was that?
14 years.
14 years you've been doing it.
A long time.
Yeah.
But I looked at what the pricing was, who would take my people. And so the same thing that you as parents are looking at. But for me, it was a different perspective. And because I was dealing with larger, oftentimes very old, super obese.
Right.
There's all kinds of issues out there. And these people have very few ways to get around. And so when my brother and I started, it was strictly service-based. And it was strictly word of mouth, passed through primarily nurses and social workers through home health of the groups that I worked with or had worked with. And it thrived. And then...
I bet.
It expanded into doing the Medicaid market. And
Because of word of mouth got around and it was
Yeah.
getting
And then-
such a need for it.
then I'm getting calls from who was then the vendor, contractor for the state about what am I doing? And so that's how I got into the Medicaid market. And, everything was going fine, and I grew, and I was having a lot of fun. And, then I became a grandma, and my priorities shifted. And I started living out of state part-time. But all the time I maintained my company for certain populations or certain contracts that I did, because I never wanted it to shut down, because I knew at some point I'd be building it back up. And then everything with transportation in Springfield pretty much came to a screeching halt during COVID. I don't know what you folks did, especially those of you that don't have family that can jump in, or
Right.
mom or dad who could jump in and suddenly be taking kids, because everything shut down. And it was very minimal amount that could be done.
And how many vehicles did you have at that time?
Around 20.
20.
Wow.
Okay.
And,
Wow.
And I service a really broad area. There's the Springfield and surrounding area, and then I go out by 45-minute tiers, and then from Joplin in by 45, and then from Raleigh in by 45, Lake of the Ozarks down to Lebanon. And so my service area that I am growing back to is very big, but it's a network like that. But in each network pod, the same thing existed, is, the bread and butter is off of insurance, and then functional needs, or people who have to get somewhere, or I learn their story from somebody, usually a social worker, the case managers, the service coordinators, or moms who call me and dads who call me, aunties and uncles. There's all kinds of people who call me, and I usually get called first, because the website and in all the state directories, I'm in under ability transportation.
A
So I'm
comes
the A.
That was very smart planning.
And that's why it's still there. But anyway, so from that, there's so much contacts. And the stuff that you ladies have expressed so far, I hear this stuff every day from people all over the state in northern Arkansas. It's the same
Is it?
everywhere.
Okay.
Nothing is different. I think what
Wow.
is, and something that I think is different in my mindset, because I am an OT, is, we're trained to look at things holistically, like a nurse. And so from that perspective, it's, the goal is that a kid gets to work. And so they got to get to work. And what are our means that we can do this in our city? Not a lot. And then what can we do to bridge that gap? I have had kids where they live outside of city limits, and we go take them from there down to the bus stop because mom and dad are working, and there's nobody else really convenient. But, we've bridged that for a lot of families for a long time.
That's great.
Or it might be that from wherever kid works, they can get a bus conveniently to the transfer station. But then they get too confused. And if they're visually impaired, that place is really is a zoo. I'm visually impaired, and I'm driving. But it's amazing what science can do. And my vision is better than 20/20 with modern technology corrections.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's amazing.
So do you problem solve a lot for those? Do you
all the
problem solve a
time.
lot? So if you see a visually
All the-
impaired person at the
Yes.
bus depot, you're thinking, okay, no, this could work better this way.
Yeah, and
Okay.
a bunch of people, I had 2 high schoolers that went to work after school, and then they could get to downtown, but they couldn't get it together to get on the next bus. And then they had to get on yet one more and to get to where they worked. And that wasn't doable. So then we met them downtown and then took them the rest of the way.
Because the buses don't wait on you.
The
You got to
buses
be
don't
sure to
wait on
get.
you.
You have to be sure to get on the right bus and get to the
It's
right
just-
one at the depot.
We're just overloaded with, in my opinion, of our local transit system. It is not designed with all the kinds of issues that we see. And hopefully at some point, there will be greater sensitivity to what the broad population is and how minute and complicated the problem base is.
What do you think we can do to solve that? I mean, do you think there needs to be more people that are more
Empathetic?
empathetic on the boards of these transportation companies?
Or is it the city bus in general? I mean, I know.
So Mary and I went and met with the director of this city.
Before COVID.
Because everyone can drive here. It's not, I mean, the general population in Springfield. There's lots of parking. People have cars. It's a more.
It's not like New York
it's not,
or Washington, D.C.
where you have to rely on a transportation system. So there's not a lot of emphasis on funding transportation in the city of Springfield, probably.
Yeah, well, that was 5 years ago, and they told us they were going to work on it,
Yeah.
that they were going to a training.
Yeah, we went, and we were like, okay, so I went to Tulsa a couple weeks when we met with this guy, I don't remember his name, and told him,
He was nice.
I was like, what's the deal with the lack of covered bus stops? I said, you've got these individuals that are, that have to walk maybe a mile to get to the bus stop, and they're sitting there and it's pouring down rain, or it's, 10 degrees out, and they're standing out there. They're devoted to go to work, and they're standing out there with no cover. And
They decided to cover the ones that were used the most.
Yeah,
Because they didn't have enough money, I believe,
funding.
to fund it, to straighten even the street, like to make the divot in the street or something like
Well,
that.
I think, if I remember correctly, because I know a lot of people that worked for city utilities, the transportation system, or the bus system in Springfield has never made money. It's not a money maker.
And it's not supposed to
Yeah,
be?
it's
is what
not
I
supposed to
heard.
be. It's supposed to be a service.
That's just what
and
I've
not a
heard.
lot of people use it enough to fund it, is what I've heard
That's
in
what
the
I've heard
past.
too.
Is it because it
That's what I've heard, too.
sucks? No.
Yeah. And it could be.
If we had a better way of running, maybe more people would use it.
I don't know. Maybe
And
they
you
would.
hear that from the well population too, is that they don't use it because the amount of wait times at a stop. They don't use it because it takes an hour to get from the Cox Hospital area down to the transfer station. About the waits, and numerous people in Springfield have written database studies on the cost and about converting to a grid system, which is so much easier to teach anybody with a brain injury. But, when the building downtown got built and the monies was put together for that and the funding, that was an excellent time to address that. And we don't have a grid system, so it didn't go anywhere. And the people who put together that study on the grid system, it was, in my opinion, very well done. And other people who read it, who are more science-based and really know how to look at that kind of data, they felt it, why wouldn't you do this?
Right.
But if we're looking at the service should be servicing the people who are the actual users, not the able and we who are
need
riding
it.
cars.
Who need it.
But we need to be making, on a grid system, the walking distance between the major arteries would be reduced. And most people don't use it because of how long they have to walk to get there. And they
I've
can't
never
do that.
been on a shuttle that I thought was efficient. Even when I was in college, I had to always park and walk. I could do it 5 times as fast. I would be late to class if I took a shuttle from the parking garage. I mean, I think
Right.
it's probably a systemic issue, even with just the bus system everywhere, right? Like it may
Well,
not be specific necessarily. I mean,
right.
it is in Springfield, we
Right.
know, but
Right.
In Oakland, when I was living in Oakland and the Bay Area, most of our home visits are done using the bus. And if it isn't like within so many minutes, then you call, they have contracts with Uber and Lyft to get us shuttled to the next place.
Oh, that's awesome.
But, you know, there you don't have a car, and the minority had a car. So like the whole parking deal is something that is not what the focus is, whereas here, such an emphasis is placed on parking. But anyways.
True.
Can you talk a little bit about Access Express, the disability bus that City Utilities or CU offers, and what, how should I say it?
How does it work?
Yeah,
How does it work?
How do you
I'd
qualify?
also like to
How do you
know
qualify?
what kind of places are they taking people? Is it just appointments? Is it just work? Or is it anything they need? I think listeners would like to know, like, what
Yes.
kind of access are they getting?
True.
Well, I'm sharing my opinion, which goes back 14 years, minus the years of direct COVID. That's the only time I haven't really dealt on the issue. I have yet to figure out who qualifies to work on Access Express. Over the years, I have referred at least 100 people.
You referred 100 people to
At
Access
least.
Express.
At
Okay.
least.
To
And
ride.
the feedback, that if whether I did the referral or if they did it and reported back to me, not one got picked up
Wow.
Or got accepted?
or got accepted.
And what's the reason why? What's the?
Do they
is
look
there a-
more like towards physical disabilities
Nope.
than cognitive?
Parkinson's, strokes, TBIs, amputees.
Is it one bus? Are we
People
to?
who-
I don't
No, there's
exactly
several.
what we're talking about.
It's a bus system that you have to qualify for. And then it picks you up instead of you having to walk to a bus stop.
Is it like
Then
a
actually picks
van
you up.
or like a
It's
smaller-
a smaller bus.
Oh, smaller
It's
bus.
a smaller
It's
a small bus
and it
or
picks you
minivan.
at the door, so you don't have to physically walk to a bus stop.
Right, it's
Okay.
And
door
it
to
takes
door.
you right to where you need to go.
Correct.
And a lot of them are ramp. They have ramps in them.
And it's run by
ramp-based.
City Utilities, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So is there a board that decides? Who decides whether you're accepted or not? What's the criteria?
I no
Do we
longer
know?
am sure because
Okay.
I've been out of it since like 2017 on that market.
We'll get
all I
back to you
know
on that.
is-
We'll have
Yeah.
to find that. We'll have to find that answer.
All I know is that I have referred a lot of people and not one got accepted. And I know that when I was doing home health, that other OTs and PTs, there was a period where we kind of pushed. And nobody got people accepted. So who is accepted? And then have witnessed the bus stopping at some houses and who they picked up. I went, why are they getting picked up? Like my person needs it.
Right.
Like I have no idea.
Right. So that's.
But I think that is something if somebody wants to look at execution and board functions and policy, that would
For
be a
Access
good
Express.
place to look. We do have drop-down buses on major routes, and, that invention is a godsend because it does allow wheelchairs in. But again, we don't see the manual wheelchairs at stops. I see power wheelchairs, but I don't see, like compared to California, it's pretty normal to have all kinds of mobility equipment at bus stops
Right.
and using the buses, but you don't see that here.
Correct. Yeah, I think Karen and I were told one time by a gentleman, I forget his name, but I don't know what he was doing here, I forgot, but he used to run the New York system. And then he was hired by Atlanta. And he was saying that most cities should want to make their communities easy to get around. Like that's part of building your community, that you should have an excellent transit system for everybody.
And he was very frustrated.
He was very
with the
frustrated
Springfield
here. Yeah.
transportation system.
Right. Right. So it sounds like that's what you ran into
Right.
with them.
Right. And I do know, this was before COVID. I had been doing a lot of research and was real active in the National Transportation Association on mobility coordination. And I figured I needed to increase my knowledge level in that department. And like, what are people doing all over the country for getting all, I call them my kids to work. And
Thank you.
there is
Yes. That's right.
a lot of areas are doing public-private collaboration. And so that in our town, it would be me contracting with city utilities, that I go get Joe Blow and pick up people. I bring them to the pickup center. That takes them off the hook for providing transportation to the outreach areas or for the hard-to-reach areas that are between those main routes. And, or like bringing kids in from Crane who need work sites in Springfield. But you use a public-private liaison. And a lot of that can be federally funded, and that passes down through the transportation funds that the state has to kick into, and then it comes down to area funding. And I went, okay, this is very doable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, in that for me, a hang-up was, as I both attended meetings in different states and also contacted the authors of different articles in research, talked a lot to the OTs and PTs that serve as transportation coordinators for different public transit lines. And we do have a therapist who is involved with city utilities. At least we did pre-COVID. And, you know, it's also very doable. And the hardest issue, I feel, locally, is changing the mindset of who the service is for and how to accomplish that mission for the broader base population.
That funding, do you apply for a grant? I mean, where's that funding at right now?
How do you get it? From my perspective, I think the best way to attack the whole issue is to collaborate and do the public-private collaboration. Because the city utilities, you know, they service that geographic area. But we need to look at the needs for our county and the northern Christian, northern
Yeah.
Right.
coming in from Lawrence, you know, but that immediate crossover area
Right.
where a lot of the population who uses Springfield services, where they are coming from. And no, you know, I wouldn't expect the utilities to go out and get your kid.
Yeah. The city bus to drive to
That's not within the reach.
to Mount Vernon.
Yeah.
But I would expect, if I lived in some other states, that I would be going and picking him up, taking him to the library center covered bus stop, and then catch the bus there and go. And then I have to plan the routes so that I got a driver there for when that bus is due. And that's how other places do it. And Springfield, in our 3-county area, is expanding rather rapidly. And we are aging up very rapidly. The move-in rate from California in expensive places to live to us is very high. I get to meet a lot of them. And I go, it's amazing how many of you live here. And it's a minority in new people I pick up out in the rural areas who are born and bred in the Ozarks. It's all transplants. And they don't, no matter what I charge, they still think it's cheap. And they don't expect a bus service to come out to them, but they bought out there a lot of acreage, knowing they were going to have to pay. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so, you know, when I do my business, I know what's all laying in these hills. I have transported a lot of people of all ages. And it would be great if people worked together and combined organizations and put together those relationships and then went after the funding. And the funding is going to come through Department of Transportation. And
Do we have an office here in Springfield?
we've got Ozark Transportation Authority.
That's over in Chesterfield.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And you've met with them, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm going to be calling and making another meeting because I moved one step closer. So my roadblock to getting, because we are not public-private mindset here, we are only nonprofit, city utility mindset.
Yep.
Okay. So they're not going to change probably in my lifetime. So instead, I will do what I got to do to make the game happen. So what does that mean? That means the only thing holding me from getting those funds is that I don't have a nonprofit. So last week, I hired somebody to fill out the paperwork and get me that so I can do this.
And ask for a grant through the Department of
Right,
Transportation.
because that way I can fund whether I want it to be a minibus, a little minibus, or if I want it to be a little minibus with a lift, or if I want to have just minivans and rear entry lifts, which is my preference, unless we have enough commitment from people who would use the service. And how do you get that commitment? It's through groups like yours. I got a network of whether they be the TBI group or autistic group or whatever challenge group. They have got to provide the people. And because they're going to be the funders, really, of making it all work. And it's not that they're the funders funding the actual cost per kid or client to ride wherever they need to go, but it is their number is what is important to continuing to get money and to advance how much money that is. You know, so the copay would have to be enforced, but ever since I started, I always have gotten gift money. That is money for people who can't pay. There's always a way to do everything.
So when you go
and that's how you do
nonprofit,
it.
you can even do your own fundraising.
That's correct.
Yeah, and so that would help
Or
you.
I
In the
can
meantime, you
partner.
gotta, yes.
And we say we're doing an autism funding fundraiser for transportation. And that kicks in the pool for to fund what I need to fund.
And you're thinking that then the cost for the individual will be very minimal, if
That's
not.
going to minimize it to make it zero. But you really want to keep a copay that addresses, per what I've been told by other people in other parts of the country, you want to keep that there no matter how minimal it is, because it is sponsorship.
Yeah.
It's ownership. And you want the parents to do that.
Okay. What are the name of your two companies that you have again?
Ability Transportation and Rides for Ability.
And Rights for Ability. So that will be on our blog and on our website.
Right.
Yeah, that's a lot of great information. And that's, I mean, listen, that came out of the goodness of your heart, correct? I was at OT, seeing everybody's needs as your patients left the building and worried about them, how they were going to get home, or they didn't
Yeah.
have anybody. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of all in the same boat. I mean, even though some of our kids can drive and some of them can't, it's just a lifelong issue.
Right. And then as your children age up,
Yes.
like you were.
They're going to get
or
older
you-
too.
Like your son,
Yes.
the issues that he has that are safety issues. Okay, those are going to start affecting him more. So like his
Right.
longevity of driving isn't going to be like to my age. You know, it's going to pop in sooner. And, you know, we need to be sensitive to that in the aging up of this entire population, let alone any special or disease-based problem. You know, they're getting older and the need for
Yes.
curb to curb is going to increase.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
But it's got to be cheaper.
Right. And not such of a hassle. Oh my gosh, it shouldn't be this difficult,
know.
But anyway,
Did your girls drive, Elizabeth? Did any of your girls drive?
Yeah, yes.
That's what I thought.
But my sons are not drivers.
Okay,
And,
yeah.
they'll be continue to be. And one thing that Dawn said made me really think about, understanding driving. I think, my sons are in cars with staff. And
right.
if those staff aren't driving safe, I want them to report that to me.
Right.
Oh, he didn't stop at that stop sign.
Yeah.
He didn't do this. She
That's
didn't do
another
that.
issue. Trusting
So-
staff with your
Right.
children on the road. Yes.
Right. So I thought that was very, very important. But yeah, so I've kind of had a variety, I have 5 children and actually 3 non-drivers.
Well, and I think it's important for everybody, if they have a service coordinator out there, to ask them if there's transportation programs out there and across the country, not just Missouri, but check it out. See what transportation programs are in your area.
Yeah.
Because they probably are out there. There's probably good ones and bad ones, but not bad, but that aren't thriving or need work or whatever. But it is definitely an issue.
Yeah, and I think, Suzie brought up some really good points, is there are, a handful of different things, but then it comes down to cost.
Right.
It comes down to, I got to get on their schedule. I got to call way ahead. If I don't have the funding, do I have a waiver? I can get this if I have a waiver, but, I might not have a waiver and I might not even know what that is. And then the out-of-pocket cost can be quite extraordinary.
Right.
So,
Right.
And we have, we didn't get to a lot of the companies, but what we would like to do is on our website and on our blog, like Oats Bus, these other driving schools, the retired driver's ed teachers. And the Mercy program, like I said, is gone, but the same teachers that they had hired, or like I said, retired coaches that used to teach driver's ed, they're out on their own. There's several of them out there that are really good. We'll have all of those listed on our websites too and blog.
yeah, I'd love to I'll put in some assistive technology too, just like that, the
True.
app Find My Phone, but there are other apps that can be
Yeah.
used when things don't go as expected.
Yeah.
So
the Life
teaching-
360, I think Dawn mentioned. And
Yeah. How do you, what's out there and what's available?
Right. So we may have a transportation part 2 in the future, because we have other companies that we haven't talked about that are out there, and what their specifications are and their payments. So we may get to that. But in the future, thank you for listening. And go ahead, Tara.
Okay, so you can contact us we have an email address now, moms@navigatingadultautism.com.
Awesome.
.com. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, and then our Facebook page is Navigating Adult Autism, and then our website is navigatingadultautism.com.
Right. Well, thank you. And like I said, there may be more on transportation part 2. Well, in fact, there will be. So stay tuned, and thank you for listening.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.